Good morning, everyone. It is office hours with Blaine Bartlett and David Meltzer. Good morning, Blaine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well today. Down here in sunny Mexico at a conference, and wish you were
Yeah,
here.
I wish I was there too. It's just not a conference, so I think everybody should know because a lot of people don't know about the uh, about TLC, and you honored me by nominating me into this group of thought leaders. The Transformational Leadership Council meets twice a year, and you guys are down there. I'm on my way to Utah today, unfortunately, not able to make it down there. But just real briefly before we get to Thane, what is the Transformational Leadership Council?
A great question. I've been a member for about 18 years now. Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup of the Soul, that whole series, founded the organization roughly about 19 years ago or so, and it's an opportunity for folks that do the work that you and I do. As an example, I mean, you go onto the website, yeah, thought leaders, media producers, writers, authors, folks that are just kind of on the cutting edge of what life could be. I mean, it really is on the cutting edge of what life could be. We're on stage all the time in a lot of our lives. And so Jack's idea was, let's just get together a couple of times a year and without an agenda and just sit down and sit long and talk much. And we have a couple of presentations during the time we're together here, but the way it's structured is we just kind of sit along, and we sit with each other, we talk, we have a cocktail, we spend some time in a nice place, but mostly it's about recharging our batteries so that we can go back out and do what we do best.
Transform the world. I love it. Well, anyone
Transform.
speaking of transforming the world, Thane fits right in with the Transformational Leadership Council and all the great authors. And there's many. You were humbled.
Mhm.
People like John Gray. Uh, uh, the list will go on and on. Probably 50 of the greatest authors in the world are part of this organization. Jim Quick,
Yeah.
but Thane Lawrie is going to rank up there. He's an author and the former CEO of Scarf, but he wrote an incredible novel that's aligned with us called The Buddhist CEO. And there seems to be a reconciliation thing. Welcome to Office Hours.
Thank you very much for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure to be back with you.
Yeah, it's great to see you
Yeah.
again as well. And as we have this great reconciliation, uh, more and more CEOs are open-minded. They just don't follow the rules of business school or of their own, work harder, work smarter attitude. And there seems to be this profound effect that spirituality is having on business. And I think your novel captures that as well. What has changed in your life, not only to write about it, but for yourself to feel comfortable writing about it?
Yeah, good question. I suppose once I finished writing the book, so I was sitting at home on my own writing the book. It was quite a solitary time, just you and the book. Then you realise once it's written, you want to get it out there in the world. And initially, it was quite a scary thought. You've revealed your inner thoughts, your inner feelings, and you wonder how it's going to be received. And thankfully, it has been received very well. But one of the nicest things about it, and maybe most surprising thing to me about this process, has been the feedback, the people that have reached out to me. Quite often in a personal way, saying they're a CEO or they're a leader, and they have experienced the same things as myself and the main character, and the difficulties and the stress and the strains, and try to deal with it through spirituality and compassion. So I've been touched by how many people have reached out to me. I suppose that's maybe validated me writing the book that it has actually touched a few hearts.
Part of, and I'm looking forward to picking up a copy of the book, Thane. But one of the things that I struck me just in kind of prepping for this conversation with you is the idea of, and this is very specific, to the work that you did with Scarf, but taking your what you literally call your compassionate leadership into an organizational structure. And this piece behind me, David and I wrote a book called Compassionate Capitalism, and I've since written another book that is organized around what does it take to be a compassionate leader in a compassionate organization. So from your perspective, as you and David kind of teed this up, you do things differently than traditional leaders might do. What is a compassionate leader from your perspective, and how did you actually leverage that work, that mindset, to take Scarf to one of the literally one of the top 100 best places to work in the UK, 6 years running?
Yeah. Well, when I inherited the job at Scarf, I became the CEO. It was in a little bit of a bad place. The culture wasn't as good as it could be, and it lost some contracts. And you didn't have to spend long there to realise morale was a bit low. And I didn't have a lot of money to sort of throw at it either, because the Scarf had lost a little bit of money over the last few years. So how am I going to change this? And I felt maybe that in the organisation for a long time, it had been very top-down management approach. I could tell that managers were nervous to take decisions, that people didn't feel valued. The staff believed in what Scarf was trying to do, but they felt the organisation got in the way. We didn't give them the infrastructure to allow them, or the support to allow them to do their job. So as a practicing Buddhist, I thought, what could I bring to this? And I suppose compassionate leadership was what went through my mind. So we set about trying to change the culture of Scarf. And I think that was the biggest impact that we had that turned the company around. It involved a lot of work. It involved putting a lot of time into it. But some of the things we started doing were we started talking differently. So we used to talk sometimes about some of our challenges in a negative way, but I started trying to introduce a language that was positive, so competitors or people we worked with, we started talking about them in a professional way. We worked with the staff to create values in the organisation. So it was 4 values, and we made sure everybody knew them, and we allowed them to try and have the input into what those values should be. And we also held them to account to say, well, if these are our values now, we must act in this way. And I also tried to change the language of the organisation. There was quite often a feeling that it was just okay to do an okay job. So I started introducing the word world class into conversations. And I don't know if we ever did become world class. We certainly became very good, stroke excellent. But just by talking in that way, people raised the bar in people's minds. So they didn't hit excellent. Rather than hitting good, they were actually hitting very good or excellent. And we try to treat people well. So even though we didn't have much money, I spent money on the infrastructure. So people were pulling their hair out because the phones didn't work, the IT didn't work, other things didn't work. We just tidied all that up. And we also created two things that may be quite novel. We had a 35-hour working week. Probably the average in the UK is about 37, 38. And we didn't, generally speaking, people did just work 35 hours. But we made it clear we wanted them to work hard in those 35 hours. And we also introduced some novel things as well. So we had something we called Scarf Time, where people were allowed to take half a day a month to do something for their community. It had to be something like voluntarily, volunteering for a charity or volunteering to tidy the beach or something that was actually worthwhile. So, and it had a big impetus. Within about 6 months, the company, if not completely turned around, it had turned around in a huge way. We started to deliver our services far better. We started to win more contracts. And we actually measured the culture as well, because the competition that we went in for, the top 100 companies in the UK has got a big competition. It's actually one of the things I'm proudest about that competition is the result is based on anonymous staff surveys, not just me as a CEO saying how good things are. It's actually based on anonymous staff surveys. And they ask about, the staff's viewing the leader, the managers, their team, the general ethos of the organisation, their paying conditions, how we look after their well-being, all these sorts of things. So, but you get a score each year, so you can actually measure your culture and see how it's going each year. And I believe, and I'm still involved with Scarf. I'm not the CEO now, but I'm still on the board. I'm the vice chairman now. But I believe that was one of the biggest things we did to turn the organization around, was treating people compassionately.
And within the context of that, there always seems to be a concern in the corporate environment. I'm of many Buddhist philosophies. I hate to label myself within the construct of the Buddhist philosophies that I believe in, but in general, understanding peace and ease and solitude. And that is counterproductive in most people's minds, because they don't understand, okay, you want us to be at peace, have solitude, and being quiet, connected, but you want us to be productive and work hard 35 hours a week. And I was curious how you communicated the law of Goya along with the Buddhist philosophies. And if those don't know, John Asseroff taught me the law of Goya, Goya, get off your ass. That's what it takes to be a successful business. How do you motivate people within the construct of being at peace and having solitude, but yet giving me everything they have for 35 hours?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things I'd say in that. I think I mentioned the last time we spoke, David, that this was the type of Buddhism I follow is Soto Zen, the Zen tradition from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite an emphasis on work. So in the book and in my personal life, the main character visits a monastery. And quite a large part of the day is actually dedicated to work in meditation. You approach it in a certain way, but you still try and work quite diligently and work quite hard. So for me, there's not such a dichotomy. As compassion doesn't mean necessarily working hard, but I understand why you asked the question, because many people will think of that. That was one of the important things I felt about setting the values of the company. So the values of the company, were important, but we said we'd hold people to it. So we made quite clear that meant working quite hard. So I hear some people saying treat people well and everything will be okay. That wasn't my experience. Treating people well, the company did turn around in general, but we still faced our fair share of difficult people. And I think other people will apply this. It's not a Shangri-La or a perfect solution. I think we know that life doesn't work quite as simply as that. But I thought part of this compassionate approach was making sure that we held people to account who didn't follow that. Because one of the things I believe I've seen in my career is one of the most demoralizing things in any organization is if everybody knows there's a toxic person there, but none of the management are willing to deal with it. And I think that's compassion, another side of compassion. Yeah, saying we're going to have to deal with this. And I think you can deal with that compassionately. You can always believe you can say to somebody, these are the behaviors that are causing that problem. This is the change, and we need to stop them causing that problem. So you're giving somebody a chance. And some people, I think, take it on board, genuinely weren't aware that their behavior was causing that problem, whereas there are also those people who knew fine well. But if they don't change, I think you've got to take action quite quickly. And I think that's part of the compassionate package.
I love that you said that thing, because behind me here, it requires great compassion and great courage. The idea of and I use the word confronting a poor performer or non-performance. You talk about treating people well. Yeah, that confrontation is an aspect of treating people well, because you're actually speaking to that part of the soul of them that wants to express, that wants to excel, that wants to thrive. And anybody that's in the in the throes of mediocrity, the internal experience is not one of thriving. It's one of just eking out an existence. So, I was struck, by your answer to my question about compassionate leader. The first thing that you went to was changing the way we talked. Yeah, and the idea that just the idea of language. Language both reflects reality. So you notice what's going on in the language of the organization, and then you kind of go, okay, what do we need to tweak here? It also, if you're working this well, language can create a new reality. So I actually wrote this down, scarf time. So you start with these things, language, scarf time. Well, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Behaviors organized around meaning. So you give something linguistically for people to kind of wrestle with and chew on and go, scarf time. How do I exhibit that? And the next thing you know, you've got an organizational culture that has shifted. the working meditation, how did your use of language come into play when you actually, and I love that phrase, working meditation, not walking meditation, but a working meditation. How did work become a meditative practice? Or how could it become? I'll just put this in the context of you describing it for other people. How could your work process actually be a working meditation that enables thriving?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I first came across working meditation. I visited a monastery it's in Northumberland, just on the border between Scotland and England. And quite a large part of the day, at least two periods of the morning and afternoon, you're actually given a job to do. And it can vary, it can really vary. I've dug ditches, planted trees, cleaned toilets and mopped floors and cut vegetables in the kitchen. And the monks give you the task and they ask you just to do it mindfully, a bit like meditation. So just say you're mopping a floor. Well, can you fully give yourself to mopping that floor? And like meditation, your mind wanders and you start thinking about what you're having for your tea or what the next question will be in this conversation. And you bring it back gently to what you're doing, meditating or mopping the floor. I think it's that view in sort of Zen that the whole of life is practice, is Buddhist practice. Are we fully engaged with each other as we speak? Am I fully engaged when I'm working? So I try to see work as the same as that. It's an expression of, in some ways you could say enlightenment, but I use that word cautiously. But I've always believed enlightenment isn't to be found in the future. It isn't to be found in a mystical mountain top. It's actually to be found here in everyday things. Working, making your breakfast, doing the boring things like cutting the vegetables and cleaning the house. I think so. I think that can be an expression. You can be in the moment, whatever you're doing, whether it's exciting or mundane. It's almost not dependent on outside factors. It's dependent on your own internal factors. How you're approaching life. And my experience, if you approach it all of life that way, everything has a simple joy to it.
Yeah,
I think that's the most profound. That's the most profound thing that you've said. I think a lot of people miss that and aligns, of course, with the physics of the universe as well, in this philosophy of compounding behaviors and the aggregation and acceleration that occurs when you do find the simple joy in all activities. It's easy to do them every day consistently without quit, and enjoying the pursuit of your own potential is the enlightenment. And I stress your own potential. This is why the novel The Buddhist CEO is a must read. Learn about what my two mentors here really have shared in their careers and have experienced in their careers in a corporate way, which I think is much needed, which is why I wanted to have Thane, you on this show, and many others. More people need more of Thane Lawrie the same way they need more of Blaine Bartlett. Thank you. Check out thanelawrie.com. You can also check out and buy the book anywhere and everywhere. So we appreciate you. I'm sure we'll see you soon. Thank you for sharing an extraordinary perspective on how to enjoy your existence. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Incredible. Thanks, blessings.
I love, I just, working meditation, what a great idea. But the way that he describes how I try to empower people to, no, you got to learn to love to take out the trash, right? There's like, why do you give meaning to all of these activities that are counterproductive when you can give a meaning that's going to be so productive and enhance physical, mental, spiritual existence? All right. I'm sure our next guest also shares some great empowerment tools. James Vasquez is here. So you'll learn how to start a business. This talk about a great expertise. I love James because he provides this for free, right? He gives you a 30-minute strategy session to help you take an idea and start a business with an idea. And there's, James, a big difference, isn't there, between having an idea and actually starting a business? And I use it in an analogy. I had a coaching client say to me that he wanted to be a professional golfer. And I said, terrific. I go, what's your handicap? And he said, well, I don't have one. I said, well, okay, now I know where we need to start. And I feel that it's analogous to so many entrepreneurs that come to me with what they say is a business. And it's like wanting to be a professional golfer and not even having a handicap yet. So how do you help people learn how to start a business?
Well, thank you for having me, David. I really appreciate that. And likewise, I share a lot of pleasure in working with you and understanding all the things that you do for entrepreneurs and businesses across the world. Many times, and we've all come across this, I read a statistic, 43% of Americans want to start a business this year alone. And we all know statistics, and we all know the rate of failure in business. So
wait, I got to stop you. I got to stop you, James, because this is always an opportunity for me. When people say everybody knows about statistics, Blaine knows this about me. My favorite statistic. Have you heard this from me?
Let me
my
hear
favorite. It's so good. My favorite statistic is 99% of all statistics are made up.
This is so true. And we all know we can make the statistics shift in the percentages that we want. And obviously, there are some statistics that are higher than others. Like the SBA statistics about business and failure. We all know that. But one of the things, David, and we all know this, where people, a lot of people say they want to start a business, just like that golfer that you had mentioned. And many of them have an idea. And we all know that ideas are only as good as the action behind them and being able to make it come to fruition. So a lot of the time that I spend with people is really fleshing out their mindset. David, I know you're big into mindset, as is Blaine. So one of the things that I like to be able to talk with people about, and that's essentially the first component of anything that I speak to them about, is really diving deep into not just getting to their why, but also just learning about their mindset and the thought processes or the perceptions that they have about what it takes to be an entrepreneur and to start a business. I mean, I've had people, and listen, we all know there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are extremely successful, but there's a lot of work that goes beyond the YouTube channel building that. And we have people that come to us and they say, I want to be a YouTuber. And I ask them, well, what's your perception of being a YouTuber? Oh, we make videos and just work a few hours a day. And I just laugh because we all know that that is not the case. Anything that we need to create takes time, takes planning, and we need to understand that. So I like to get off the table right from the start what their perceptions are of owning a business, starting a business, also to understand their background. Sometimes it's really hard to tell people that, you know what, maybe you aren't meant to start your own business. Maybe you're better off just doing what you're doing really well and then having a hobby as a painter or a golfer or what have you. I had this auto mechanic that came to me, and he said he was great at repairing cars. I said, that's excellent. Why do you want to start your own business? He said, well, I'm really good at repairing cars. I said, okay, what do you know about the auto repair business? He knew nothing. He wasn't even a manager. He didn't even run a shop. And that was the first thing I suggested. I said, why don't you use your current role to be able to expand your abilities and expand your knowledge base so you can learn the business of being an auto repair shop so you could depend to understand more about it. And he's now a manager, by the way, at his shop, and he's doing that versus taking the entrepreneurial plunge and diving into that. So we all know, I believe really deeply in reading and really just having that ability to form your thoughts into productive activities and really being able to move the needle forward for wherever your journey will begin. And I also like to talk to them about that because where you are isn't always where you're going to end up. And you always have to be looking forward. Never. No, exactly. And I really appreciate the analogy of taking out the trash, and I get to take out the trash and things like that, because at the end of the day, yeah, I've owned several businesses, and one of them was a franchise business, which I grew to 2 locations, which I was really proud of. I had a team of people, but guess who used to take out the trash? I still took out the trash. And I had really competent employees, but for whatever reason, on Friday after 5:30, the trash was still there. And it's like they were out the door, but James was there till 8, 9 o'clock anyway. So I just took out the trash, and it's okay. But at the end of the day, I realized that, you know what, this is something I get to do. This is something I'm doing as a part of my journey and just completing it. And it's a privilege, if you will. I didn't always enjoy it, of course, but at least I understood that. And as you both, I know Blaine included, you all read a lot. And one of the books that really resonated with me, outside of How to Win Friends and Influence People, of course, that's one of the basics, right? was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And then just the mindset. I often recommend people read that book because I like the viewpoint that he had from his two dads. And I really use that because there's one quote that he always says, and it's about the mindset of, I can't afford something, which is mostly what the poor people say. I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And that always changes your mindset and shuts off the thinking process to be able to change your way of thinking and be more of a growth mindset, where he says, why don't you say, how can I afford it? And that's what he says rich people think. Or I like to say not necessarily just rich people, but people with an ambitious growth mentality have. And we all, as entrepreneurs and starting a business, whether you're doing a solopreneurship as maybe you're a business coach, or if you're starting a big business and scaling it, you really have to understand that you have to have the right mindset to be able to propel your business through those ups and downs, because we all know we face those challenges, and you have to pivot to be able to react to the marketplace. And that's what I like to do. That's why I like to share with people. Obviously, I'm really passionate about it because it's something true to my heart. I know we talked about in this conversation, I heard you guys talking about Buddhists and those viewpoints. And I believe, David, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a saying, if something is worth doing, do it with all your heart. Uh-huh. And I believe that fully, because anything that I invest myself into, whether it's taking out the trash or getting roses for my fiance, I do it with all my heart. And that's the same way I am in business. And I have a passion for helping people. And that's what I like to say.
Love it.
I love that. It's, my dad was a serial entrepreneur, and it was, growing up, in hindsight now, just kind of looking back at that time in my life when I was really exposed to that. And he started a trucking company. He had one of the best butcher shops. Crazy. The one of the best butcher shops in the area. We did custom cutting, for game. He ran a pizza franchise. He founded the pizza. So I was kind of like, where's the link? These trucking, they were very disparate, but what he did know was how to do a business. He knew how to run a business. What the business was, that really didn't make a difference to him, as long as it was something he just got this idea, like, I would love to do that. He loved to start and build things. He didn't necessarily like to run them. That's where my mom came in. but the idea, and I really like what you're talking about here, James. Not every person's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Find what you love to do it well, and then if you get bitten by the bug, let's kind of learn what's the business of business, how to do a business. In your work with your clients, and I know you've got a free strategy session that you make available to folks here. The idea of the business of business. How do you actually begin to frame that conversation with somebody that may not have a clue about what the business of business is?
That's a great question, Blaine. And I appreciate your background with your dad and your mom. I think that's awesome. And I'll just say one thing before I answer your question, is that when I owned my franchise was a print marketing franchise. So I had to wear many business hats to learn each industry, because I wasn't focused in a niche. I had pizzerias come to me as well as fine dining restaurants, which that in of itself is such a difference. And then I had many other industries. So I understand how your dad was really into the business of building businesses, and I had to learn the marketing of marketing all variety of businesses. So when I have somebody that comes to me and they don't know the business of the particular business they're in, first of all, before I have any call with anybody, they fill out a form. So I kind of get an insight as to what industry they're going to be talking about. So if I don't know that specific industry, I do research on that industry myself. Mm-hmm. Chances are I know a little bit about the industry. I'm one of those weirdos that knows a little bit about a lot of things. So I do the research about it, and I also, if I have anybody in my circle of influence, I reach out to them to learn from them what the pitfalls were, and especially starting up. So then I could speak to the person and have an intelligent conversation about having them understand where they are headed and to make sure they understand the ups and downs of what that industry is like, whether it's a cash flow business that they have to understand how to bankroll their ups and downs, or if it's just targeting the right audience and building that business. But a lot of times it's a real productive conversation because, Blaine, a lot of times they don't know the industry fully. Most of the time I have people that come to me who are in the industry as a particular role for that particular business. Like I mentioned with the auto repair person, that's usually when people think they want to start a business. And I've actually learned a lot. I used to work with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, and I learned a tremendous amount. We used to do national seminars in different cities talking about entrepreneurship and also about building a business. It was after working with him I learned that I have a passion for teaching and helping people understand how to build a business. Well, we all have seen Shark Tank, and we all see what that person goes on Shark Tank and they over evaluate their company with the evaluations, and they don't necessarily understand the business, but they have this great idea, right? And they love to pitch it, and then they wonder why they don't get a deal. Well, we also had a lot of people pitch Kevin, and I was on his team to receive a lot of these concepts and such. And a lot of times they had what they thought was a great idea. And then when they come to an investor, whether it be an angel investor or venture capitalist, they don't really understand the business or the industry. So that's something that I spend a lot of time on explaining to them. Part of your job is to do research on your industry and really see what differentiates yourself, but also what part you feel you're going to do really well. Because if you're not going to be able to do all of it, and obviously starting out, you want to make sure you understand all facets, but then you can always outsource the areas that you don't like to do, because we all don't like doing something. And chances are, if you don't like doing that activity in your business, that's going to be something that's going to be a downward area that you're not going to focus on. And that's where I tell people that's okay. If you have an understanding of it, then you hire somebody. So then when they speak to you, you understand what they're talking to you about, but always outsource that. But yeah, thanks for the question, Blaine, because that's an area that I come across many times. And that's always something I'm always faced with, to make sure I understand the challenges that the particular person's going into and how I could address that.
James Vasquez, there's a million great ideas out there, but to learn how to make it a business is a whole different realm, and how to make money with it as well. Even takes it the next step further. Learn how to start a business.net. James Vasquez, thank you so much for bringing reality to a bunch of dreamers. I appreciate it.
David, thank you. As always, a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thank you both.
Say hi to Kevin for me too if you see him.
I will. I'll see him at Florida.
Right on.
All right.
I figured as much. Thank you. All right. We got Billy the Kid on here. Now we have Ask Steve Kid. Steve Kid's here.
Kid,
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, you just fit right into the transition, right? I mean, talk about a million great ideas. There's no better place to have a million great ideas than best-selling books. There's a million great ideas in books, and they are shared quite frequently. And you're not only a business coach and author yourself, best-selling author, entrepreneur at Thriving Bestsellers, but also have your own way of making money, an ongoing wealth guide that you give out to everyone. But it's interesting because I was a sports agent for a period of time and ran one of the most notable sports agencies, and people are like, what a cutthroat business it must be, so scarce. And I said, I have to tell you the truth. I've done a couple movies and some TV shows, and that's even more cutthroat. But do you know what the most cutthroat business that I've ever been involved with, and I've been blessed to be involved with it with Blaine as he put up our book behind him, is the book business. Holy moly. Like, talk about the prey of emotion. Now you have a capture of ideas in a material form, whether it's hardback, softback, audio, or ebook. And it's literally a reflection of self. and so many people don't monetize their books, and in fact it's probably one of the worst business decisions that they've made because of the ego and everything involved. Everybody sells them something that doesn't have any impact at all because nobody's honest out there. And what I love about you is you really get straightforward about, having a best-selling book and how to monetize it, how to create business with it. And I want to start there. What are some of those strategies or things that we could help people with from that ideation state of, hey, I got this great idea for a book and I'm going to make millions because it's going to be a bestseller?
It's interesting. I actually was in a meeting with Seth Godin, small group of us men, and he said it better than I've heard anybody ever say it in the industry. And he said, if you're writing your book to make money, then don't. But if you want to make money, you absolutely have to have a book. And I think that really just puts it in a nutshell.
Repeat it one more time, because I started clapping halfway through, because
Sure, yeah.
The second part's as important as the first part.
If you're writing your book to make money, then don't. But if you want to make money, you absolutely have to have a book.
Yep.
We can close the show out, but we're gonna have more questions.
Yeah, I actually would love to have you, Steve, kind of parse that out a little bit, because I mean, as a meme, it really lands, but there is great wisdom in that. And I've written 5 books. David, you've written, I think, 5 as well. So the idea, we write them because, and I'll just speak for myself. I write it because I got something that I want to say. Now, the first book I wrote, it was kind of like, God, no, who's going to read this? Why would anybody read it? It's kind of scary to put it all out there. And somebody did ask me, "Are you intending to make money out of this?" I'm going, "No, I just want to put this on paper, and I want to get it out there." And it served me really well. But there's a piece where there needs to be an ROI on that not just an emotional ROI, but a compensatory material ROI. And that's an interesting dichotomy, because the idea of if you want to make money, don't write the book. But if you want to make money, or do write the book. So it's the paradox. Can you talk about that a little bit in the way that you actually work with your authors to position what they're doing and then how they do what they do on the backside?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to liken it. I even did it in my latest book. I liken it to graduating from medical school. I mean, a kid that comes out of, they're now officially Dr. So-and-so, that's the last person you want to do surgery on you. They have the knowledge. They've passed the test. They are officially an expert at anatomy and physiology. But then from there, they have to actually learn how to be able to do it. A book, even a best-selling book, is really that same thing. It's the foundation that credentials you so that you are positioned as the expert in what you are. And the biggest problem that we run into is we want to try to be an expert in something that somebody else is, rather than being an expert in what we're good at. And it's not that we aren't all good at something. It's a matter of we need to really understand what really makes us tick also, but what really makes us unique in the world, so that we're sharing that and giving them the beginning step to then be able to engage deeper with us. So we don't have a deeper intention for what can you do after this book with me. You're really not going to have the impact that you want to have with the book, because you're just leaving them with information and nothing to do with it.
And that idea of a credential, a calling card, a business card, understanding, it can work against you today because of the digital aspect. And I tell people this all the time, because, people will write what I call a pamphlet, and they'll do it within, I love the people. I wrote a book in 60 hours or 20 hours. I write my book or whatever. You have to be very careful as well, because today it can work against you. send my books out. I pay for the book, I pay for shipping, I sign them and send them to anyone in the United States, and ebooks and audiobooks outside of the United States. And I have never sold more copies by giving away my book. And that's because it's time tested, right? My book is good. I know my book is good. And it is a credential to me. People read the book and they want to buy it for their friends and so on and so on. But a lot of people write books that suck, and they hurried through it. They didn't take, it's not a labor of love. It didn't take them, it took them 20 hours on a chat bot, to figure out, here's how to, start your business. And, they don't understand the damage because, it's like bad food. If you serve bad food at a restaurant, your restaurant's dead. You kill your personal brand by, giving out a credential that's a bad credential. How much time do you spend on making sure that people have a quality product, that they're using as a credential, not something that's going to damage or kill their brand?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first piece of that really boils down to, and one of my earliest mentors, Dr. Donald Joy, who's written 40 or 50 books, said the most amazing thing. He said, a lot of people, if not everybody, wants to be an author. Very few people are actually talented writers. And so one of the biggest things I do is I do all of our books speaking to write. The concept of having a really well honed signature talk, and I'm not talking about something that you came up with in a few minutes, but somebody that really understands how to get in front of a stage of people, how to get them engaged, and then give them truly actionable material and a next step from that. Those are going to be the best kind of books. Then length doesn't really become a matter, because all of us have been to that signature talk where the person just droned on forever and we learned absolutely nothing. And we've also been to those talks where in 5, 10, 15 minutes, the person just rocked our world with information. And that's what's important. And that's then where, going back to what I said, using somebody that's an interviewer that knows where the book should be going and can help bring out of you that really talented piece of who you are with intention, as opposed to just random ramblings. That's really one of the biggest secrets to getting out something that's quality, versus just, the random musings that all of us have done.
PowerPoint to death. But Blaine, before I let you ask that last question, I think there is an important thing about, because I want to make sure I clarify what I was saying, because it's not the amount of time, like you said. In fact, I can write a book faster than, my 8th book will be so much quicker than my first one. It's like a nightstand. That first nightstand takes forever, and the second one takes 20 minutes. But you talked about your essence, right? Like, what is your skills, your knowledge, and your desire? One of the nice things about that big audience is that there's a place, if you write a quality book and your process is so good at extracting the quality and clarity that's necessary to resonate with a portion of a 7.6 billion person audience. And because we do have audio and digital books, your essence, I always use this lady, Dr. Pimple Popper, because it just is amazing that she has a Bravo show, that she has so many subscribers on YouTube, and million best-selling book. She's amazing. And in my mind, even 10 years ago, someone would say, hey, there's this lady, Dr. Pimple Popper, and she's going to be more popular than the entire Pro Football Hall of Fame. I would like, how's that possible? Well, today it is, and it takes people like Steve Kidd to help capture your essence and amplify that essence to attract the audience. And that community is what we monetize in a variety of different ways if we have the proper credential. All right, Blaine, last question, my friend.
Yeah, just real quick. Something that you said, Steve, just kind of struck me here. In one of my first, and I forget which book it was, but I remember working with my editor, and the fixation was on word count. How many? It needs to have a certain volume to it. And it was really disorienting to me. And I say disorienting in the sense that, the focus became on volume of content rather than quality of content. And what you said that actually sparked this was, grabbing the audience, being able to make impact, and not worried about the length of the speech. Because I've sat through hour-long keynotes that is just kind of, oh my God. I've sat through 20-minute keynotes that, like you said, just rocked my world. And being able to work with somebody in that sense, and I'm just kind of positing this for you here, when you're working with people from the mindset of the idea of I've got to get everything I know out on the tableau, as opposed to tightening it, editing it, working with it. How do you work with your authors to actually have them begin to understand that more is not better?
So first of all, I'll give you a statistic. Amazon has found these days, because we live in a Twitter world where everybody can have full conversations in 140 characters, that if your book is 100 print pages or less, more than 60% of people that read it will read it and finish it. If it goes between 101 and 200 pages, that drops to around 20%. And if your book goes over 200 pages, it's actually less than 3% of people that ever finish the book. And since typically the end of the book is where we're giving them the actionable steps, if they never get to the end of the book, we never get them to the action. So that's the statistic. What I like to say to people is take a point, make it really clear, and give a person a clear action from that one point. And then if there's a second point, write book two. That's how a person is going to learn and grow, is one thing, one step at a time, versus we give them 10 things. And by the time they're down at the end of the 10 things, they've forgotten what step 1 and step 2 is, never took action on it. And then they are always frustrated because number 10 never works for them.
Yeah. And it's an amazing thing that today we're so clear on bite-size pieces of actionable items, and it really works well. But leveraging your situational knowledge, Steve, you have dealt with so many authors, so many books, and understanding the business and business development around that credential of writing a book makes you one of the best business coaches concerning this business, and a best-selling author yourself. Check out thrivingbestsellers.com if you want a real approach to writing a book, one that you can make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun with. Check out Steve Kidd and check out his free guide that he's willing to give you, the ongoingwealthguide.com, ongoing wealth guide. Thank you, Steve, for everything you do to clear the interference in a very scarce and confusing business, writing books. I appreciate your efforts to help us all. I thank you. Come join us again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great job.
Thanks,
Take care.
Steve.
All right. Much better than Billy the Kid. But more importantly, it's time to get you off to all my friends down there. If you're not sending my love to everyone, I will be disappointed, especially to your wonderful wife.
I've already been doing it.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. What's your takeaway before I let you take away?
Language. It's interesting. We ended on writing, but language as a mechanism by which we both can appreciate what reality is, but also how we create reality, and not just the spoken language, the written language, but more importantly, I think the language that I carry in here, the conversation that, we call it mindset, but that internal conversation that gets manifested externally. It shows up out there in my life. So the takeaway here is, again, for me, just being mindful of that internal dialogue, and how do I actually monitor and curate that internal dialogue, so I'm actually creating the kind of and manifesting the kind of life that I want to have in my experience.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, the word manifestation, because it's this materialization. And I'm constantly playing with the idea of taking things from nothingness to a possibility, to a probability, to perspective, to reality. And I have attached knowing your what, your who, your how, and knowing your now prioritization of the now. But
Yeah.
it's very ethereal. It's very hard for people to understand being present. And my takeaway is, this idea of, all of these timeless ideas, are just timeless ideas unless we put them in the construct of time. And there is only one time, it's now. And whether you're a Buddhist monk running a business, which, this great peaceful solitude, a working meditation, that is a great way to be present. Is I'm in a state of working meditation. So starting a business is now a working meditation of this great idea that I had. So I'm a great mechanic. That's a great meditation. But is it a working meditation? And if so, where am I best suited as a manager, as an entrepreneur? There's this working meditation. And even in writing a book, because I think at its essence, that's your essence, and your idea is a book. But there becomes this working meditation of an ebook, an audiobook, a pamphlet, whatever it is. So working meditation is my takeaway of the day, of being present, of doing things now, of getting shit done. And you're a master of the working meditation. I love the fact that we have the Compassionate Capitalism backdrop today. If you haven't checked out that book, I know I'm constantly working on the Connected to Goodness, but Compassionate Capitalism is kind of the next step. If you get this stuff, it's a great book to take you to the next level. And I rarely talk about it. I'm glad you brought it up there as a reminder. You can get that at blainebartlett.com. You can email me as well, david@dmeltzer.com. If you haven't checked out the Mindset Mastermind, just an incredible way to change your life. Blaine Bartlett, a TLC champion, changing lives all over the world. Go enjoy yourself, recharge your batteries, and now come back to empower so many people. Thanks for taking an early morning break with me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. And I love you. I'm here all the time. I love these shows.
I know. Me too. Thanks. I love seeing you.
Buddy.
Take care.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Great. Blaine Bartlett, blainebartlett.com. All right, everyone. This working meditation, do it today. Reconcile your life with great ideas. Give meaning to everything you see. You can make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun. Enlightenment is today, not tomorrow, not yesterday. Give the meaning to the past inflection points, defining moments, historical references, aligned with the trajectory of where you want to be, but be. I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am worthy. Let's figure out what we're doing to interfere with it. Most importantly, email me if you need my book. I'm happy to, as I said, sign it, send it to you, ship it to you, pay for shipping and the book, no problem. Exercises, guides, books, they're all free. David@dmeltzer.com. Be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self. Do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.